Super Bowl or bust. That's what the 49ers are now. We'll talk about it next on Iron Ace Nonsense. Hello and welcome. Excuse me. My voice is still messed up from the game. Hello and welcome to Iron Ace Nonsense. 9 and 8 here with you once again as we continue on through the NFL season into week 3. Lots happened since the last time we talked on Thursday with Jason Puckett and talked a lot of shit and backed it up on Sunday. God damn, we blew the fucking brakes off the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday. And there's certain things that are sad, but it's not sad to see those fuckers get destroyed. With me, as always, on Tuesdays is Jamal Armstrong. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing. I don't really know exactly
how I'm feeling. Is that a Supersonics hat?
It is. It is. Now that they're no longer a team, I like throwback and like vintage type things. So I saw this hat on a website that I like. I'm really into like streetwear, things like that. And so I saw that and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna grab this Supersonics hat. I actually really like it. I get a lot of compliments on it, to be honest. But no, I'm doing, man. I really am. I'm just doing. I'm clearly bummed about Trey Lance. I wish it hadn't happened. But I'm also always excited when we can beat the Seahawks. And this is a nice, convincing win over them. I had tweeted this out that the 49ers are beginning to show who we thought the 49ers are. Clearly, obviously, Trey Lance got hurt. So we know what they are with Jimmy Garoppolo, which is still a Super Bowl contending team.
I don't know what is going on with this green screen tonight, by the way. I just want to say what's up to Amin the Dream. I met him in person on Sunday. It was with his family, so I don't want to bother him too much, but it was a pleasure to meet you too, buddy. Yeah, I'm 6'5". People don't realize that until they meet me, but it was cool to meet you. Glad you're kicking ass on your channel. I think Jamal's going on your show tomorrow, so keep up the good work, buddy. It's a pleasure to meet you. But continue, Jamal. Sorry, I just want to make sure we got to that. And then also I want to say hi to 49ers Throwback. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys. Looking forward to going on the show with you. I mean, we were just talking a few minutes ago in the DMs, but looking forward to going on the show with him starting tomorrow and then every other Wednesday from there as well. Hi to Throwback as well, too. Been a faithful listener, and we do really appreciate your support. So thank you for that as well. But no, like I said, it's always nice to beat the Seahawks. It's good. The 49ers are beginning to show that they are who we thought they were. Yes, we'll get into talking about Trey Lance and the sort, but there's still this is still a Super Bowl contending roster. The roster's still going to be good, minus without injuries. Injuries are a part of the game. Those things do happen. Trey Lance goes down. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in. We know what we have with them. We know we can be in the mix for a Super Bowl. So I'm still thinking with my head about that while also dealing with the fact that I'm sad that the quarterback I was hoping to see develop this year doesn't get that opportunity. Probably, right? According to a certain surgeon out there.
And we'll talk more about that situation. I think that let's get the happiness out of the way, and then we'll talk about the more somber news. I think that there's a lot to talk about with Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. I think that's what the main of the show will be. But I mean, this was a dominant performance on Sunday. It was an absolute, Seattle came in. They had no idea who the 49ers were. And before Trey Lance got hurt, he was kicking their ass, running the ball, throwing the ball. They were marching down the field real easily. And I think that the 49ers are a tremendous football team. I think that the monsoon game was very much like one of those games where it's like, this isn't who these guys are. This is just what happens when the conditions aren't great. You're playing in Chicago. It's not, obviously it's definitely not California, and that's what happens. And they came out here. They allowed 0 points. Exactly. 49ers Throwback just said it. Defense allowed 0 points to a team that Russell Wilson, that beat Russell Wilson the week before in the Denver Broncos, who we see on Sunday, and they beat him by 17 points. And I think that, obviously that's the first game of the season. The Seahawks may not be very good. I don't think they're very good. I think I told you that on this show last week. They're not very good. But
we called this out. You and I called this out. We said this was going to happen. There was going to be a letdown.
Yeah,
their Super Bowl was last week.
Well, and I think they also I just think they're not very good. I think San Francisco really. I think a lot of it has to do with San Francisco because whether or not we say the Seahawks aren't good, which they aren't, right? DK Metcalf is a great football player. Tyler Lockett
100%.
is one of the most consistent wide receivers in the entire league.
He had a good game too.
Tyler Lockett got his because, you know, it was pretty much, you know, catch the ball 5 yards, run a little bit, get out of bounds, you know, that kind of stuff, which is what the defense allows. But when your defense is allowing only that type of shit, that's a good thing. Because what's happening is, you know, the little dink and dunk things. I don't know how much you watched the Legion of Boom, but I watched a lot of Legion of Boom film. And the Legion of Boom was so good because Russell Wilson would put them up 7, and you knew they were going to win by 7. You knew they were going to win. Because they were so good. They could basically stop you from scoring points, because the only way to beat the Legion of Boom when you're in a cover 3 system where your safeties are good, your corners are good, and your pass rush is really good, is to dink and dunk the middle of the field. And if you dink and dunk the middle of the field, you're only getting 5, 10 yards, you know, barely getting a first down, you know, that kind of stuff. And so it's very hard to score a lot of points on a team that has a defense like that. And I feel like when I think about this 49er team and what they're going to be going forward with Jimmy Garoppolo at the helm, Jimmy's only going to have to score 14, 21 points, and they're going to win every game. I mean, that's just how it is. This defense is that good. Talanoa Hufanga is better than Jaquiski Tartt. And I think it's 2 games in, we can say that. And I like Jaquiski Tartt. I think he was a good football player. But Talanoa Hufanga is better. And Charvarius Ward is absolutely better than Richard Sherman when he was on this team. Emmanuel Mosley is an even better corner than he was. And Samuel Womack might be the next lockdown slot corner. I mean, did you hear any noise about anyone that Samuel Womack was covering this week? Because I sure didn't.
That's a good thing, right? Not hearing any noise from a rookie corner who's a nickel guy, has a lot of responsibilities, not only in the pass game, but in the run game as well. To not hear from him, to not hear a lot, I'll take that, especially as you're starting through the first couple of weeks of your season, of your career. I will gladly take that. So I agree with you on that part.
There's just a ton of talent. And Nick Bosa got 3 sacks.
Right.
Nick Bosa got 3 sacks. I mean, Nick Bosa is Nick Bosa. I mean, with TJ Watt out for the season, I think that there's 3 players right now who can win Defensive Player of the Year. It's Nick Bosa, it's Micah Parsons, and it's Minka Fitzpatrick. And that's it. I don't see any other players winning Defensive Player of the Year between those guys. And if Bosa can continue to show that kind of dominance game in and game out, he's going to win it. And they're going to be the best defense in the league, because who wants to deal with a pass rush like that while also your stud wide receivers are completely blanket coverage downfield? And that's what the Legion of Boom did. That's what they were good at. And the 49ers feel 2 games into the season, Bears and Seahawks, I get it, they feel like the Legion of Boom.
I like that. I like how you say that. And I see there's a question here in the chat that is asking me, when can we say Samuel Womack will be better than K'Wan Williams? I definitely think it's too early to say that. Here's one thing I will say, though, and I'm going to actually tie this to not only K'Wan Williams and Sam Womack. I'm actually going to use the same comparison for Jaquiski Tartt and Talanoa Hufanga. K'Wan Williams was, especially during the prime of his time with the 49ers, was a lockdown corner. He wasn't getting a lot of interceptions, things like that. He just was limiting a lot of plays and was really, really, really stout, if not the best run defending nickel corner. I think he was from 2019 for sure. 2020, slight step back. 2021, even more slight step back, but still really good. 2019 to me, I thought K'Wan Williams was elite, but it wasn't necessarily ball skills, things like that. It was more technically sound play. I think you can say the exact same thing about a Jaquiski Tartt. I think he is a technically sound player who's also, when you're looking at him compared to Jaquiski Tartt, or hear him compared to Talanoa Hufanga, Tartt is much more athletic by the numbers. And what I mean by that is if they're going to sit there and run a 40, if you're going to sit there and go test them pound for pound, who's the most athletic safety out of those 2, it's Jaquiski Tartt by a mile. But when it comes to their play style, I look at him and I say, you know what? He's just, and this isn't a bad thing, but it's almost going to sound like I'm diminishing it. He's just a more technically sound player, a very smart player that happens to have really good athletic traits, and he knows how to use those well too. Like, he was blessed with that. Where I find the difference between Samuel Womack and Talanoa Hufanga compared to the 2 previous vets that I'm talking about, both of those guys to start their career, and like I said, it's only 2 weeks. I'm not tempering expectations for everyone else. This is for me too. It's been 2 weeks, but I've seen them make plays on the ball. That is something you can somewhat teach, but it's also has to be kind of innately in you. And what I mean by that being innately in you is you learn that You learn that by studying film, but you also have to have the ability to go out there and make those plays too when they're given. I've seen Talanoa Hufanga. Well, I'm going to tell you this straight up right now. Through the first 2 weeks of the season, Talanoa Hufanga, a safety, has been a ball hawk. And what I mean by that is you can go look at the box score and you can go watch the plays. He's always around the ball, not only in tackling when he's making plays, shooting gaps, he's tipping balls. Back in the preseason, you and I talked about it, how many times he had tipped balls that forced or turned into interceptions for Marcelino McCrary Ball. How about this past week? He did the same thing, tipped the ball that ended up being a pick for Deshaun Gibson. He's been around the ball. Absolutely. He led the 49ers in pass deflections this week. He tied for the lead last week in the Monsoon game. Him and I forgot the other person had one. So it's not like a lot, but he's always around the ball. Right now, I can say the same thing about Samuel Womack. Yes, I know he hasn't had a pick this year yet throughout the regular season, but it's only 2 weeks. And like you just said, Nate, like we're not hearing too much about him right now. That sounds like a good thing. That means teams aren't able to pick on either one of these two guys. And then the last thing I'll say just about that is this isn't even the final form of the 49ers defense yet. We're not starting Jimmy Ward because he's been out. When Jimmy Ward comes back, imagine if he can stay healthy and the rest of these guys can stay healthy, you get I'll say 1A and 1B, you get your defensive leader by communication back. I think him and Fred Warner. You get that in the secondary. You get that guy back. Imagine the things that you can do with Talanoa Hufanga and with Jimmy Ward. And I didn't know this coming into the season. It looks like now we've got solid depth behind them into Deshaun Gibson. And we'll see if anybody else steps up outside of that. You know, we've still got Tarvarius Moore, who's going to get his opportunities as well, too. George Odom, when they can kind of slide in here and there. So I'm saying that not that I think that these two players are currently better than the veterans that we've had because I need to see it longer. But the things that 49ers fans want to see, the things that people in general, I think, want to see when watching football is not only can you make the plays that are there, can you make the exceptional play? And I've seen that so far out of these two kids. I just need to see it a little bit more. And that's me tempering expectations for myself as well. So,
and you know, it's funny you mentioned the fact that it's Tyshawn Gibson at safety, and I think that's a huge thing we're looking. It's not Jimmy Ward, right? Jimmy Ward still has to come back, but Jimmy Ward, when he's healthy, you know, we talk about him being injured. When he's healthy, he's one of the best safeties in the league. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have this kid in Talanoa Hufanga who's just all over the field, playing with this guy who's one of the best safeties in the league for the last couple of years. You have Tarvarius Ward, who's currently, I think, top 3 at corner in the NFL right now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Mosley, who's been pretty damn good. Womack, who has been quiet. I haven't heard a word from any slot receivers. You know, maybe Tyler Lockett, but that game was over. It didn't matter what Tyler Lockett was doing.
He was the only piece of offense they had. It was only
Greenlaw. You know, Greenlaw was he did what he did in the Bears game, but Greenlaw was pretty clear in a way. You know, I never heard a peep about bad things from Greenlaw during that whole Seahawks game. So Greenlaw, Aziz, and Fred. Then you've got Bosa, you've got Armstead, you've got Kinlaw, who's just a fucking monster. Kinlaw is just, I just can't get over the stuff this guy's doing. He's huge. He's in people's faces. And I think Kinlaw is doing what we all kind of hoped DeForest Buckner would do more often. Kinlaw is so big and so strong that he's making it so Nick Bosa just has free reign one-on-one to the quarterback every time. And I think that's what they drafted Kinlaw for, right? And so Kinlaw is killing it. Armstead's been great. Ebukam has been terrific. You've got Drake Jackson being a complete, I mean, for a second-round pick, he's been great. And he's not expected to start. He's been terrific. It's just when you think about this defense, it's hard not just to geeked up about who this defense is. And I don't think it matters who plays quarterback because this defense is so good. Because the fact that we know this defense can win, you know, get all the way to the NFC Championship game when they're not as good as this. We know they can get all the way to the Super Bowl when they're not as good as this. Like this defense right now, and maybe next week we'll get humbled by Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. I don't think it's going to happen. Right now is leaps and bounds ahead of last year. They had Josh Norman at corner for most of the year, and they still made the NFC Championship game. Right. I mean, I don't think they're going to be a 1 seed no matter what because I think the Eagles are just going to run straight to the 1 seed. And everyone who told me I was wrong when I posted that, shame on you. I knew better than you. Eagles are going to be the 1 seed, but I wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco's the 2 seed or the 3 seed, just because of the fact that Garoppolo's not going to have to do much. You know, this defense is that good.
Yeah, and I think that part that I want to add to that too, that I think that you touched on really well. You were talking about the defensive line, and you started with Nick Bosa. Well, you know what? I kind of want to word it like this. I think we're in a nice we're in a nice soft landing situation, I'll call it, for Drake Jackson. He is a first year player. He is a rookie. He's going to have some ups and downs. I know we have a lot of high expectations for him. Most of us Niners fans think that he was a first round talent. I'm one of those that thinks that as well. He just happened to be not used in the best ways while he was USC Trojan. Go Trojans, by the way, fight on. Which allowed him to drop. That in mind, I like that we can slowly develop him, bring him along, have him in on certain pass rushing situations, but we still have really, really, really solid depth behind him. Not only him, we've got, like you had just mentioned, Ebucom, you've got Charles Omenihu, you have guys all at the defensive tackle positions as well too. We talked about Javon Kinlaw. This defensive line comes at you in waves. Sound familiar? Because we said the same thing last year, right? We just so happened to add a first-round talent and Drake Jackson to that, so that he has like I said, a soft landing to where he's going to learn. He's going to learn some things on the fly, but he's going to have time to take over and potentially take over that opposite side from Nick Bosa. I want to emphasize the fact that should this team make the playoffs, which I still expect them to, I think one of our defining factors, one of our edges, I think probably going into almost every game, will be that part on the defensive line. It's not just worrying about a Micah Parsons or singling out just Nick Bosa. You can't double team him, because if Kinlaw stays healthy, he's going to command double teams because of just how massive the man is. He's going to probably ragdoll if you keep one guy on him. So you can't do it with him. Oh, by the way, we still have a guy named Eric Armstead, who's, if not the best, probably, in my opinion, a top 3 run stuffing defensive tackle with pass rush ability as well too, and the versatility. Oh, by the way, like I said, we have Drake Jackson, and we have guys that shuffle in and out, so we're able to stay fresh. We're able to stay attacking all these guys. So just like we said last year, I think we're still in a position to where this defensive line, it can actually change the course of games. It can take over games. It can change the course of games. And like you said, we can win games 14, 17, 21 to 10, 21 to 14, 21 to 13, things like that. Those scores can absolutely happen.
Yeah.
Now you hope in a situation, if that does happen, you hope that Jimmy Garoppolo or whoever's playing quarterback, you would hope that they can help you score a few more points in that situation, obviously. But if this offense stays in rhythm, if this offense stays ahead of the chains, we're able to run the ball the way that we want to, yeah, this defense will stay healthy, and we're able to kind of bog down other offenses. They've shown that through 2 weeks. Competition will obviously start to pick up here in the next couple of weeks, and we get a real test this week. But I like where we're at, and we have every reason to be positive and confident.
Jamal, I don't even know if it's a real test this week, to be honest with you. And maybe I'm coming off, a little cocky, but I don't think Denver's very good. I think Nathaniel Hackett's kind of a joke. And then they get the Rams the following. And I understand the Rams, I think they're worse. I just don't see it. They play Carolina, stinks. Falcons stink. The first test of the season, in my opinion, is the fucking best quarterback in the league on October 23rd, Patrick Mahomes. You have Patrick Mahomes coming into your house. Levi's better be the loudest place on earth. And I mean, that's the first game I really feel like they could have.
Hey, can we ask the chat if it sounds funny? Can we ask the chat real quick if it sounds funny? Yeah. Okay, I hear you clear now. Maybe it was my end. I don't know.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, the first test of the season to me is Kansas City, but when you look at this schedule, you really look at it. The Chargers, okay, maybe. The Chiefs, okay. The Dolphins, the Bucks, but like the Seahawks, the Commanders, the Raiders, the Cardinals twice, the Saints. I just don't see any world where, unless Brock Purdy is just terrible, they don't make the playoffs and they don't win the division right now. At least 2 games into the season, and knowing the first game was kind of a clunker against the Bears in a monsoon. You know, we also obviously we have a lot to talk about today with the new quarterback being Jimmy Garoppolo going forward. Trey Lance.
Can we talk about Brandon Ayuk real quick before we go to Trey?
Yeah.
Just real quick.
What do you want to say about Brandon Ayuk specifically?
Yeah. From last year to this year to start the season has been awesome. I thought that he caused multiple pass interferences on Michael Jackson. Was actually the corner that was guarding him most of the game, number 30, Michael Jackson. The dude was getting cooked. Like, Brandon Ayuk was cooking him. And I know that there were a couple throws there that Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't able to quite get to him, like that were underthrown. But Brandon Ayuk was still able to make a play on the ball. I thought that was awesome, and be able to draw those PIs. I think just the growth of him, not only as his mental, like his attitude, because I think that he's starting to grow into his own. I've seen him start to become a little bit more cocky. He makes a play, he stands up, he's kind of flexing on people. Like, that's good. He's beginning to show a bit more of who he is. Not only that, but I think his route running ability, and then one other underrated thing, Jimmy Garoppolo is actually consistently throwing to him. Now it was only one game, right? Mm-hmm. But I can actually say that I think it's a bit more than one game, just due to the fact that Brandon Ayuk wasn't really a part of this offense for the first 6 weeks of last season. Year. And he still almost ended up with 1,000 yards. I think he ended with like 869. It was real close to still. Yeah, he was still real close to topping 1,000 yards. So I think that says more. Not only, I don't think it says more about Jimmy Garoppolo. I think it says more about Brandon Ayuk, and just the fact that Brandon Ayuk is really actually integrated into this offense. He's a true part of this offense. And I think slowly but surely, like, they are turning him into wide receiver one. That's what they're looking for. He has the skill set. We saw it all preseason, and it's starting to show up now in these actual games that are counting. But we've seen it in preseason. We've seen it in training camp. He was cooking guys. He was making great plays against who we all now know to be a really good CB1 in Charvarius Ward. We saw what he's done against Emmanuel Mosley. Those guys are no slouches. So I just wanted to give him some credit as well, too. I think going forward, the ceiling of this offense, yes, like I said, Trey's hurt, so with Jimmy Garoppolo, but the ceiling of this offense with Jimmy Garoppolo goes up slightly another notch with Brandon Ayuk more involved into it. So we can still get the same Jimmy Garoppolo that we've seen, but players progress. So if Deebo Samuel still turns out to be Deebo Samuel, which it still looks like that, George Kittle comes back, and Brandon Ayuk has taken even just half of a step to the next level, and he's consistently getting targets throughout this whole season, I do think that can be enough to raise this team to get us back into a Super Bowl, competing for another chance at a championship. So I just wanted to mention him and say his growth has been awesome. I'd like to see it, and I like to see that they're going to him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exciting where the 49ers wide receiver core is right now, whether or not Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo is playing. I think that they're really talented, and I think that, Deebo Samuel basically just picked up where he left off last year. I think that, and that's a good sign, right? When you think about what's gone on with this team and all the weird stuff that happened with Deebo. He's still the man. He's still as good as he always has been. And so that's exciting. Right. But let's spend a little bit of time. Let's talk about Trey Lance, this whole situation with Trey Lance. We'll ask some questions. We'll have a conversation about, what Kyle Shanahan, and then we'll finish off the show talking about Jimmy Garoppolo and what he has to do and expectations, different things like that. So, it's kind of a shame that Trey Lance goes down. He played 2.5 games last year. He played all the preseason. He was going to be the starter all year. He goes down in the first quarter of this game on a freak play. It's football. Things happen. Yeah. Sometimes guys, weird stuff happens. Jimmy Garoppolo, his third game of his career with the Niners, on his actual first season with the Niners, runs out of bounds and gets a non-contact injury and tears his ACL. And so, this kind of stuff happens. The stuff I don't like to see is the people calling for Kyle's head because of the fact that he ran a quarterback who is a better threat when he runs against a Seahawks team that can't stop the run than he is with the passing quarterback right now. And I think that there's a lot of weird misconceptions being said on Twitter right now, a lot of weird misconceptions being said around Kyle. By specific people in the media that, we're not going to name names or anything like that. I don't want to do that. But, Jamal, I just want to have a conversation with you. I want to know what your thoughts are on this whole Trey Lance thing. Because me personally, I think it's just a free play. I think that, it sucks that it happened to him, but it was a read option. And on a read option, the quarterback has the choice to either take the ball or throw the ball. And he chose to run the ball. And I think that people don't truly understand what they're watching because they don't pay as much attention as me or you or, Jesse, for instance, and really pay attention to the way this offense has been run with Trey Lance. On a read option play, Trey Lance is given the opportunity to throw. He chooses to run, and Trey Lance continues to choose to not slide and not protect himself. And so when you don't protect yourself, this kind of stuff happens. Granted, that wasn't the reason he got hurt. He got hurt. It was technically, I think someone said somewhere it was actually non-contact because he got hurt before he hit the ground, or before someone hit him.
Know. So that's interesting. Go ahead. I'll let you finish before I take.
No. Yeah, and so I just think that this kind of stuff happens. You're going to run your quarterback when he has the ability to run, because what it does is it scares teams and basically allows you to be able to throw the ball or just find ways to make the defense play a little more honest. And so when Trey Lance inevitably does come back next year, he's going to be running the ball again. Like that, I don't know what people think that all of a sudden he's had this injury. Maybe he'll protect himself. Maybe he'll slide like Justin Fields is doing. But I don't know why people have this weird misconception that when Trey Lance comes back, all of a sudden he's just not going to run the ball anymore, because I think this is who Trey Lance is. He's a throwing quarterback who knows how to run. And right now he's more useful as a runner than he is a passer. Not to say he's a terrible passer. I just think he has accuracy issues. And I think that takes time. There's a video going around today, and I'll get to you. I'm sorry, I'm kind of ranting, but
you're fine. You're good.
There's a video going around today of Josh Allen, his first 2 years of his career, and he's a mess, an absolute fucking mess. The ball isn't accurate. It's overthrown. It's underthrown. It's off. It's this. It's that. I don't think Trey Lance is that bad of a passer as Josh Allen was in his first couple of years. I think Trey Lance is a better passer now than Josh Allen was his rookie year. And I think that once Trey Lance gets into the NFL game and is able to play more and able to get within an NFL script and able to play whole games in good weather, then I think that things will change. But I think that it sucks it happened in this game, because I think Kyle was setting up some cool shit for Trey Lance. I think he was doing a lot of read option to keep the Seahawks off, honest. And that read option was going to lead to big passes down the field, big passes to wide open receivers. That's how this offense works. And if you don't really pay attention, you don't understand that. But a whole year without Trey Lance is a bummer, because this kid he needs to play. We don't know who the fuck he is. I have no idea who Trey Lance is. That's my biggest problem at this point.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a lot there, and a lot of that makes a lot of sense. Where to start with this one? I'm going to be on. Okay, so I'll say this. Listen, injuries are absolutely a part of football. Like they just happen, right? They do. And it can happen on a play that we like. It can happen on a play that we don't like. And that's kind of where some of our narratives start. Or I don't even want to say narratives, opinions. That's where they start. It just so happens to be that in this specific incident, our franchise quarterback got hurt on a play where he was running. Now, it's not that he's not ever going to use his legs, because that is one of his gifts. It is one of his talents. He's going to use his legs. Where I differ, I think, a little bit from you, or it sounds like I differ. Maybe we don't. Where it sounds like it is, on the read option, it's still running between the tackles. I don't love him running between the tackles, but I also get that he runs between the tackles because it's easier to get yardage that way. Because I think that he has the ability to hit the outside or hit the edges. I'd rather see my quarterback run on the edges just because it's less contact.
I think if they had Kittle, he would, though. That's the problem, is because George Kittle isn't playing, they're not able to run on the outside, because I don't trust Ross Dwelly or Charlie Warner to be blocking for him on the edges.
Yeah, but I still think they run him through the middle more, even with Kittle there. I feel like they run him through the middle more often than they do. It's not that they don't do it on the edge. I just feel like Kyle had made a decision that he's going to run in between the tackles, which is okay. I'm not saying that's bad, because Trey Lance is a bigger dude. But I've also seen a lot of people say, oh, well, he's like Josh Allen, and Josh Allen does it. And Kyle said it himself too. Buffalo runs it. It's fine when they run it. Why are we on my head when we run it?
Yeah.
But I think for me, I don't like that. And I actually was telling Kevin about this right after the game. We were walking back, and I said, to me, that comment sounds a bit disingenuous, just because if you actually sit down, and someone like myself or you probably knows this a little bit more than just someone who's just watching and says, oh, well, Buffalo does it. In my personal, humble opinion, Josh Allen is like a one of one. And so is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is only in the conversation with Michael Vick in terms of a runner. And I think Lamar Jackson is purely the best runner. But those are the guys that we talk about, or some talking heads. Those are the names thrown around when you're talking about Trey Lance. Oh, well, he's a runner. Maybe he can be like a Lamar Jackson. Maybe he can be more like a Josh Allen. Maybe he's a mixture because he's about 6'4", 225, 230. Where I differ is that, yes, Trey Lance has the build that is similar, not quite as big as Josh Allen, and maybe he will because Trey's still a young kid. Maybe he'll grow a little bit bigger. He has a similar build, but Josh Allen is truly a one of one. I can't tell you how many shots I've seen Josh Allen take square on. I truly can't, because I don't think that happens to him often. And that's a credit to him athletically. That's a credit to him not only sliding, but he gets out of bounds as well too. I think Trey Lance can do those similar things, but I've also seen, not only in the NFL, in college, I've seen him take guys head on. So to me, where I differ in the fact that Kyle says, I'm just going to run him through the tackles consistently, and then it's up to Trey to decide if he's going to slide. He's never been that to this point in his career. Can he eventually get there? Sure. And I'm going to be honest, this injury probably leads him to do that more often going forward, but only to,
I hope so.
Only to a small extent if Kyle still calls these plays, which is okay. Like I said, I'm not mad that he got hurt. I understand injuries happen. I just would rather see it on the edge. So that said, I think it's disingenuous, because I think that Josh Allen is a one of one. I think it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
You're going to run the ball. You're going to run the ball with this.
They have
and I think that you have exactly. And I think that Trey Lance was on the field for 2 series, 3 rushes, 3 pass attempts. Now, someone who wants to be funny is going to say, oh, so was he going to run the ball 25 times a game and he was going to pass the ball 20 times a game because he was on pace 3 for 3? He was on like, no, let's be real. That was not going to happen. But I'll say this, it was probably going to be 8+. It was going to be 8+. In all the games that he's played in, I think it was the Texans game. He ran for 8 for 31 yards. And then he was like 16 for 23. So I thought he actually played pretty well in that game. That's where you're going to find more of a balance. Obviously, we saw.
And he played a full game against the Texans. That's the thing is I think, everyone's overreacting to what was one quarter. Who's to say they continued running him as much in the third and fourth quarter as they did in the first quarter? I think that if you watch a lot of stuff about Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers specifically, and the way that Kyle Shanahan runs the 49ers, he does a lot of stuff that he does a lot of in the first quarter that doesn't work. He changes it and does something different in the third and fourth quarter, because what happens is, and I think that anyone who really studies Kyle Shanahan's offense will tell you, he'll do something that gets like 4 yards, right, in the first quarter. Right. And what it'll do is it'll just make that linebacker think just a little bit less about coming or covering someone instead coming forward to hit Trey when he comes across, right? Well, because of that, Deebo Samuel's wide the fuck open and he runs for a touchdown. And I think that there's so many examples when you watch 49ers film and you watch real 49, the stuff that 49ers do of him doing that. Who's to say that he would have continued to run Trey like that? I don't think it would have happened. I don't even think he would have hit 13 runs in that game. That's the thing, is people are talking about, he's going to run him into the ground. No, he's setting up certain things, and read options shouldn't count. A quarterback power counts as a quarterback run. Right. A scramble does not count as a quarterback run. So just saying every run is a quarterback run. It just counts as a carry. Exactly.
A quarterback run is like that's on him for choosing to scramble. Right.
Yeah, a quarterback power run is on Kyle. Yes, if he was hurt on quarterback power, you might have a point that he was hurt because of quarterback power. He was hurt on a read option where if Trey Lance wanted to, he could throw the ball to Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk, wherever we wanted. So the people who continue to complain about, Kyle doesn't let him throw. Well, Kyle lets him throw. It's read option. He's given the choice.
But a read option is based off the defense too, though. It's based off the defense too, though. Yeah. So it's 50-50. I agree with you there. It's 50-50.
But Mahomes on a read option, when over the course of his career, he's looking to throw more than he has run. This kid is really young, man. This is really early in his career. He's probably going to run the ball more than he throw the ball until his arm accuracy and he develops as a passer. And people continue to talk about the Josh Allen thing. Josh Allen ran a lot that rookie year. He only had 2,000 yards total, I think, his rookie year. And he ran the ball like 80 times.
Yeah.
And 2,000 total yards and 80 runs. Like, that's insane, right? And it's because these young kids come in the league. They don't truly understand how to throw or how to not to get intercepted or whatever. Don't trust their arm fully, or they need to develop better accuracy, because in FCS, for instance, the corner is nowhere near the receiver a lot of the time. In the NFL, Darius Slay is on your ass. Darius Slay is right there, ready to intercept that ball. And it's either you have trust yourself to throw over him, or you run the ball and you get an easy 4 or 5 yards that sets up an easier first down. And so right now, there is some blame to go with Kyle, because I think Kyle should have started Trey Lance last year. But
me too.
I think that this injury cannot be blamed on Kyle Shanahan at all. This is who this kid is, and this is who this kid's going to be next year when he comes back to starting again next year. The only reason he doesn't start next year is because Jimmy Garoppolo wins the Super Bowl and they're crazy enough to sign him to an extension, which I just don't think they'll do. I think this is Jimmy Garoppolo's, this is the last dance. This is now Jimmy Garoppolo's last chance to prove that everyone who said Jimmy Garoppolo should be the quarterback of this team. Jimmy Garoppolo is the most pro-ready quarterback for this team. Okay, then win the Super Bowl. If Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't win the Super Bowl, then okay, so all that yelling, all that nonsense, all that constant, berating a 22-year-old kid. I'm 32 years old. I couldn't imagine the stuff people said to that child. He's a child, basically. He's a kid. And so if Kyle Shanahan can win the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, then I'll say, those three magic words, I was wrong.
Yeah.
But if Jimmy Garoppolo does not win the Super Bowl and he loses to Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, then what was the point of yelling about Jimmy Garoppolo and treating a 22-year-old kid like he didn't deserve to be here when they had Jimmy Garoppolo there? That's the stuff I can't stand. Treating a 22-year-old kid like he doesn't deserve to be here when he's clearly shown he has the talent. Josh Allen, if anything, everyone thought Josh Allen was a bust. Josh Allen's the second best quarterback in the league now. And so you think people just said to Josh Allen, this 23-year-old kid, hey, you're garbage, dude. Get the fuck out of here. Buffalo needs to win. Buffalo wants to win. Buffalo hasn't won a Super Bowl in years. And so I feel like I'm talking in circles, but like the way that people talked about Trey Lance, if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't win the Super Bowl, then you can clown on anyone who was a Jimmy Truther or wanted Jimmy Garoppolo to start over Trey Lance for the rest of the time, till the sun burns out, because they were wrong. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't win the Super Bowl. And now at this point, if Jimmy Garoppolo has to win the Super Bowl, this is Super Bowl or bust. That's what this is. This season is Super Bowl or bust now.
And I haven't given my opinion or said exactly how I feel about Kyle Shanahan in this. And I do think that he plays a role in it. But I'm also like, this is where I stand with Kyle. I 100% don't want to fire him. I don't, not even a little bit, not right now. But, and this is where I think kind of fan talk and group think kind of can cloud how each individual might actually think about it. Myself, we don't want him fired. And I'm sure we don't want him fired for a whole bunch of different reasons, but we both don't want him fired at the end of the day. And here's why I don't want him fired. One, he would get scooped up because he is a good coach. He knows how to put a playbook together. He knows how to call plays really well, and he's a really good play designer. And players like to play for him. Whether we like it or not, he's been a part of turning this whole roster around. We were a dumpster fire when he first came, and that we've turned this around, and we have Pro Bowlers on both sides of the ball. We have all pros on both sides of the ball now, whether it be through the draft, whether it be through trade. We've gotten that, and he's been able to develop players as well too. So that's one reason. But also, I do think that he has part of the blame in this, and that I think Kyle is also a type of dude that is he's a control freak. He is, and it's not like Jimmy Garoppolo is the greatest passer. He's not so much more efficient than Trey Lance. And this is where something I think Kyle does that's similar to that. I think he feels the same way in this regard about both quarterbacks. I don't think he fully trusts either one of them to be able to run his whole playbook right now. Trey Lance, for obvious reasons, he's a second-year player. Jimmy Garoppolo, while he has been in the league, he hasn't proven that he can take care of the ball the way that Kyle would want to in order to open up the offense the way I think Kyle would want to. Also knowing that Jimmy Garoppolo's strengths isn't passing the ball deep down the field. He's not a deep ball passer. I think he completes like 16% of his deep balls past 30 yards. And I think the league average is like 31%. So he's completing significantly less. With Trey Lance, like I just said, he's a second-year player. He's still growing not only into the system, he's still growing mechanically as a quarterback. He's still growing into what it means to play the position. And so I think that's why we see what we saw last night, or what we saw on Sunday. 3 rushes, 3 passes. He's trying to marry what Trey does well while also trying to find that balance of where he can pass, how he can pass with this kid. I don't like, and it's up until today, and I'll say this, up until maybe 25 minutes ago, I had been mad at Kyle for not letting Trey pass more, but I give him a little bit more of a pass now because it was 2 weeks into the season. And I do think that it was going to grow and grow and grow.
Oh, yeah.
And while I think that he's using his legs now, and he would use his legs all season, he would have been given opportunities over time. But I've said this for months. Kyle is the type of guy that you have to show him. He doesn't just trust these guys. He is a control freak. The system makes the quarterback. He said that. These are things Kyle Shanahan has said. So with that in mind, I look at this situation, I say, well, he doesn't fully trust Jimmy Garoppolo, but he knows he can win with the guy. Might be a more scaled back playbook than he would want. Sure. Well, he hasn't seen it from Trey Lance, so he doesn't fully trust Trey Lance to that level yet. Will he eventually grow into that? I do think Trey Lance can grow into that, but this is where he is as a passer right now. He's not the most accurate passer, but I don't give him a pass because I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo was the most accurate passer. Where Jimmy differs from Trey and where they're literally the complete opposite is that Trey is really good at throwing the ball deep down the field. Jimmy Garoppolo is the better intermediate to short passer right now. Like they're literally almost polar opposites. It's just that Trey Lance has the higher ceiling. Quite obviously, he has the more physical talent. Yeah, the more physical gifts are with Trey Lance. He's just so young, and he's like a moldable piece of clay. Can Kyle Shanahan be patient with the kid and allow him to grow and mold into the quarterback that he can be? I hope so. I haven't seen it. And so I've said it my mindset this whole week has been, no way in hell I'm firing Kyle Shanahan. I'm not. Absolutely. He's too great of a coach. I like him. I want him to stay here. But I'm allowed to be critical and I'm allowed to question things. I'm allowed to wonder why things happen a certain way. But there's no way in hell I'm firing him. I'm not at that point. That's just me then.
And it's funny, Brianna, I'm going to say her last name wrong. Mariana basically says, Kyle's a control freak 100%, and that's exactly why this thing works. Because Kyle wants to control everything, this is why it works. I mean, you have a guy coming in who came into one of the worst rosters I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. I haven't seen a football roster worse than the San Francisco 49ers roster that he inherited, right? He came in and said, okay, I'm going to hire my general manager. I'm going to hire all my guys, right?
Right.
And
bringing McDaniels with me, all that.
Exactly. And sure, they drafted Solomon Thomas, which was the wrong pick, right? But that's his first draft. If you look at the draft since then, it's gotten better and better and better. Right. And he consistently finds guys in the 3rd and 4th and 5th, sometimes 6th, 7th round guys who play. And you're going to tell me that you believe that a guy who built one of the best rosters in the NFL, maybe not the best, but this is one of the best rosters in the NFL, whether Trey Lance is on it or Jimmy Garoppolo is on it. This is one of the best rosters in the entire NFL. This guy did it, and he's consistently kept them in contention, except for the 1 year where they experienced the worst injuries in the history of sports. They went to the Super Bowl. They had the injury year. They went back to the NFC Championship game. They're a Super Bowl favorite this year, even with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. You're telling me you want to fire the guy who is taking one of the probably most game manager quarterbacks in the NFL to the Super Bowl and 2 NFC Championship games, and you want him gone because he had a rookie quarterback who went to an FCS school and played 1 year and ran the ball up the middle and had a freak accident happen? That's the most insane freaking thing I've ever heard in my entire life. The only thing I've heard that's more insane is something is so crazy that people have said on Twitter and on about this 49er team. I don't even want to repeat it on this program. There's some crazy stuff people are saying. Fire Kyle Shanahan is the most insane thing I've ever heard because, okay, so they fired Kyle Shanahan. He's immediately hired somewhere else. And what are you left with? A roster that was all built by Kyle and a head coach who's not as good as Kyle. Yeah. You think Sean Payton right now is better than Kyle Shanahan? You think Sean Payton?
I don't know if he's necessarily better, but I do think he's a good
NFL. He's a great head coach, right?
Yeah.
But Sean Payton, the guy who's spending his Sunday mornings on NFL Fox mornings,
hey, that's by choice. That's by choice. He chose to leave him.
No, he chose to leave. Okay, I get that, but I'm saying you think that guy's better than Kyle Shanahan, the guy who built this roster from the ground up, has taken you to a Super Bowl and 2 NFC Championship games, and the only reason they haven't won that other NFC Championship game in that Super Bowl is because of the quarterback that they got, because everyone freaked out that they were waiting to get Kirk Cousins has found ways to lose. Ways to lose and play some of the worst fourth quarters in the history of the NFL. If Kyle literally just says, Jimmy, here's the deal. I'm not going to let you lose this for me. We're going to run Debo 4 downs every single time for the whole entire fourth quarter. They probably go to the Super Bowl last year. They probably win. Sure. I mean, I just like Kyle may be a control freak, but he's the best thing to happen to this organization since George Seifert took over after Bill Walsh. Like, I love Jim Harbaugh, but you guys want to fire Kyle Shanahan when he's already done almost as much as Jim Harbaugh did, and Jim Harbaugh inherited a roster that was talented. Jim Harbaugh inherited Patrick Willis. Jim Harbaugh inherited Alex Smith. Jim Harbaugh inherited Joe Staley. They built this whole thing from the ground up for the most part. Trent Williams wasn't here before Kyle Shanahan. Nick Bosa wasn't here before Kyle Shanahan. Eric Armstead was. Right. John Kinlaw was not. Talanoa Hufanga. Jimmy Ward actually was. I'm sorry. Fred Warner. Emmanuel Mosley. Aziz Al-Shaair. Dre Greenlaw. I can name the whole roster. Most of this roster was not here before Kyle Shanahan. You think that there's a planet where a roster this talented is just built in 3 years by just any guy off the street? He brought in George Kittle. Thanks for your throwback. Yeah. He brought in George Kittle. I get it. You can be frustrated with Kyle Shanahan. You can say, you know what? I don't like the way he handled the quarterback situation. Okay, I don't like this. I don't like that. Right? That's fine. That's fine. That's your prerogative. But to say fire a guy who's done nothing but win when there's teams out there who fucking just lose every single fucking year, no matter who the head coach is, they bring head coaches in, they're there for 2 years, and they fucking fire them 2 years later. You want to fire the guy who's consistently won since he finally got a roster? People are like, oh, well, the first 3 years he didn't win. Well, the first 3 years he had nobody. The first 3 years he had one of the worst rosters in the NFL. What the fuck? I just don't get it, man. Like, I don't understand what makes you so spoiled or so just rotten to the core that you're like, you know what? I'm tired of winning. I'm tired of having talented football players. I'm tired of buying nice jerseys with great football players on it. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to draft number 1 overall, and I want a quarterback who my coach believes in. And I want to blow up my roster. I want to get rid of Nick Bosa because he doesn't believe in Trey Lance. I want to get rid of Debo Samuel because he likes Jimmy Garoppolo more than Trey Lance. It's the fucking wildest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. It's the wildest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. You want to get rid of Nick fucking Bosa? The dude is going to win Defensive Player of the Year. I'll bet anybody who wants to sit in my comments and tell me he won't. The guy's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. Talanoa Hufanga, like, it just blows my mind, the shit people are saying.
I'll say this.
Debo Samuel is the best player I've watched in a Niner uniform since Terrell Owens, and you want to get rid of him because he likes Jimmy Garoppolo?
I'll say this part, honestly. You have to remember this. What is the word fan short for? Fanatic. That means there's not a whole lot of reason and rhyme in groupthink when it comes to this. So you're going to hear crazy things like that. Should Kyle Shanahan be fired? And I'll be honest. I'm going to say this part too. If somebody wants to fire Kyle Shanahan and that's their choice, that's what they think about it. All right, that's cool. I don't agree, but if that's your reasoning, cool. You know, for whatever reason, that's where you got to. Hopefully it's rooted in like real reason and rhyme behind it rather than just this guy doesn't get it done. He's been here 6 years. He's not won us a Super Bowl. I would not fire Kyle Shanahan. I'll say this, though. If Kyle Shanahan does somehow get fired this year or something goes crazy, I'm going to be honest. I didn't expect this to be a Jamal defending Sean Payton day, but Sean Payton would be a great landing spot. This is a former Super Bowl winning quarterback or coach. It's been a few years since he won. I understand that, but he has won. He is he's a mind that can rival Kyle Shanahan in terms of just the offensive mind, play calling, play designing. He's a guy. He's done a lot of good stuff. Now I understand he also had Drew Brees, but he also had guys like Jimmy Graham. He had Marcus Cole. He's had some good players there as well too.
Fire Kyle Shanahan and bring in Sean Payton. He doesn't want Trey Lance. He wants his own quarterback.
I don't know about that because we see what he was doing with Taysom Hill. That's more of a project than I think Trey Lance was at the time.
I don't even want to talk about this, Jamal.
So that's just my last little part there in regards to Kyle Shanahan. I wouldn't fire him, but if you do, I think that would be a solid landing spot. Now, the last thing I'll say about this, just when it comes to the Trey Lance thing too, is listen, like we said to start this, injuries are a part of this. It does happen. For me personally, I would like to see Trey develop more as a passer, and there's only one way that can happen. If we're going to be fair, he has to go out there and do it. Now, I don't want him to drop back 30 times a game. I do want him to, like, you can marry it the same way you can marry it for Jimmy Garoppolo, because when Jimmy Garoppolo came into the game, how did Jimmy get his one passing touchdown? Off a play action boot rollout to Ross Dwelly. It was Ross Dwelly, right? Yeah, it was Ross Dwelly who caught the touchdown, turned up field. Like, you can actually do those same things with Trey Lance, and it might be even more of a threat because Trey's ability to use his legs off of that play action. So, like I said, you can look at that small sample size and question certain things, but if we're going to be also fair, which is something I want to do, I've said the same thing when it comes to Talanoa Hufanga. We can have all the questions and thoughts about him, but then when he makes plays or when he does things, you have to be able to talk about that and give him the praise as well too. So when it comes to this and Shanahan and Trey, I can look at those 6 plays, those 3 dropbacks, and those 3 rushing attempts and say, you know what? I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if I liked it, but I also don't think it was going to be 25 rushes and 25 passes. That's not realistic. That wasn't going to happen. You can look at those 6 plays and say, this is interesting, but you also have to know and understand that, like you had said as well too, Kyle's going to set up things to do later in the game. That's how he does it. Now, does it always have a rhyme or reason? Not always, because I've seen him get tight in big games as well too. But I also think that goes back to him getting tight because he doesn't necessarily fully trust his quarterback. Now, to get to that level, especially if it's going to be Trey Lance going forward, my point is he's going to have to be put in those positions. He's going to have to show if he can sink or swim. What I mean by that is marrying the run and the pass. I don't want to see him just dropping back 5 times or like a Patrick Mahomes, dropping back 50 times a game so he gets these reps in. No, we are trying to balance winning a Super Bowl right now with a Super Bowl caliber roster team. So that's why we saw what we saw out of him, marrying the pass with the run. Injuries just happen. I hate it. I don't like it, but they happen.
I'm going to answer the question here, and then we'll move on to Garoppolo.
Yeah. Hey, Jamal, what's your favorite play of the Seahawks game? Mine is the Mooney Ward INT in the end zone when DJ Dallas threw. That play was hilarious. It was hilarious because clearly Travarius Ward was right there, and we played zone, but he was like right in front of his face. So I thought that play was hilarious. My favorite play, that's a great question. I hadn't really thought about it. I think I'm going to have to go with the Hufunga's play where he tipped the ball and Tashawn Gibson got his interception. I like that play a lot. I just think Hufunga's been playing really well throughout the course of this season so far through 2 weeks, and him making those plays. It's just nice to see that, especially me, as not only me, there was a bunch of us who were thinking, I just don't know. I'm not someone who completely written him off. I didn't write him off. I just was unsure about things. So I kind of reserve whether I say he's good or bad. I reserve that until I see more. And so my point with him was, yeah, he's a little bit slower than I like. I don't know. I have to see it. But I quickly said after week 1, I don't care about speed anymore when it comes to a 40 because game speed is way different. You can't sit here and tell me that kid does not play like his hair is on fire on the field. He does not look like the slowest guy on the field. And I don't think he is the slowest guy on the field when he's on the field. Why? This part right here. If you're making that play right here in your head and you're maybe even like a step ahead or half a second ahead of the other players, you don't look 4.7, 4.8 slow. You don't, and you're not.
Yeah.
So I like that play. I thought that play was cool.
Mine was every time Nick Bosa threw Juno Smith to the ground. I really like that. I wish it was Russell Wilson. Let's talk a little bit. We have 10 minutes left. Let's just talk a little bit about it. So Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback of the 49ers going forward. Jimmy Garoppolo has only played 1 season where he was fully healthy. I want to ask you, real quick, do you think Jimmy Garoppolo plays every single game up into, say they get to the Super Bowl, right? Up into the Super Bowl, do you think Jimmy Garoppolo plays every single game up to the Super Bowl if they make it?
Nate, I'm going to answer this 2 ways, man. If I was a betting man, heck no. Like, hell no. I haven't seen that injury history. The injury history has me scared. I have no reason to believe that he would play the whole season. And we saw him have a couple rushing attempts. Like, he actually ran the ball for a touchdown. He had a rushing touchdown. So If I were a betting man, I would say absolutely not. And I also still don't fully believe in this offensive line yet. And by believe, I mean I haven't seen enough yet. They've
They
played
the
two
Seahawks.
teams.
They have one of the worst pass rushes in the
Exactly.
league.
They've played two teams where in the monsoon game, you're automatically going to run the ball a lot. We did that. They played the Seahawks, who couldn't stop the run. I don't want this to happen, but it's going to come a point where
Aaron Donald will be the one that tells us who this offensive line.
Some team is going to actually not stop the run game, but they're going to bottle it up enough to where we have to pass maybe a little bit more than Kyle wants to. And how do we respond? How does this offensive line hold up at that point? I haven't seen it yet, and so I'm holding out my hope. I'm holding out hope that they're good. I don't know yet. Like you said, it's either going to be Sean McVay. We don't play the Eagles this year, do we?
No, we don't. Thank God.
Their run defense is still real good too. So we don't play them. It's like you said, we're probably going to see that in the Rams game. Maybe we see that in the Broncos game, but I doubt it. I actually said prior to the season starting, I think the Broncos will still be in the mix for the playoffs, probably as a wild card. That doesn't surprise me, but I do think they'll start slow, and they very much have started slow. They struggled with the Texans a couple days ago.
It's a really interesting.
They're improving, but the Texans are still the Texans.
The Texans are still the Texans. It's a very interesting third game of the season to play in Denver on Sunday Night Football against Russell Wilson, who has owned you for so long. I think another great statement by this team would be for that defense to go out there and just take care of Russell. And if they can do that, I'm going to feel pretty good about the Rams game next week on Monday Night Football. And so we'll see what happens. I do think you're absolutely right. I think Brock Purdy will play a couple games this season, and I think that's kind of exciting for one reason only, because then you get to see what you actually have, right?
Right.
You know Trey Lance is going to be the starter next year, right? Mm-hmm. But there's some weird shit that happens in the NFL, right? If Garoppolo's not coming back, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So if Brock Purdy comes in and they win some games with Brock Purdy, that's great, because that means that you don't have to do anything at your backup position. You don't have to spend a draft pick. You don't have to do anything. You can make Brock Purdy Trey Lance's backup next season, and let's ride, And I think that's the best case scenario if Brock Purdy ends up coming in, is that you get to find out who's going to be the backup for Trey Lance, because Trey Lance is going to be the starter next year. There's just too much invested in Trey Lance for him not to be the starter. And we'll see what happens, because we're going to go back to the bumps and bruises, because the kid just has no reps. But if they come off a Super Bowl, who gives a shit? If they're Super Bowl champions, I don't think anybody's going to care what Kyle does for the next 5 years. Minute they win the Super Bowl, the 49ers are going to extend them another 6 years. Absolutely, right away. I don't care what anybody says. The minute you win the Super Bowl, you extend Kyle another 6 years. You don't even give him a thought of even having a chance to leave. Yeah. And I think even if you only get to the NFC Championship game and lose this year, I think you extend them, because Trey Lance is obviously the future. They've already said that Trey Lance is the future. We don't know who Trey Lance is, but we're not going to know who Trey Lance is for 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens. Maybe during the offseason, he'll train and get better. But this season, right now, the 2021-22 NFL season is going to be the Jimmy Garoppolo show. And Jimmy Garoppolo needs to go out there and play better football than he did last year, less turnovers, and they're going to go to the Super Bowl. It's as simple as that. The defense is that good.
No, they are. This defense is 100% Super Bowl ready. It almost would be kind of funny and maybe even poetic justice to see if we got back there again, we're playing the Chiefs again. I want to see this defense versus them. That could be awesome. I just think that would be a really good matchup. Charvarius Ward against his former court. I think that would be great. But I'll say this last little part, I know we're trying to close up here.
You're good.
Try to finish this in the next 30 seconds or so, or next minute or so. A little quick 30-second spat here on Brock Purdy. I won't even say too much about him, but this is probably the nicest thing I can say about the kid. I think he's good enough right now that we can win a game or two with him this season. One, this defense is that good that I think that they can, like we talked about earlier, continue to hold teams probably below their scoring average. I think that can happen. And then the second part is, why do you think the 49ers actually drafted this kid? I know he was Mr. Irrelevant. He is a lot like Jimmy Garoppolo, with a bit more juice in his legs. The kid is a bit more athletic than I think people
truly want to give him credit for.
He can move. He has a good, I think he's really good right now, short to intermediate. He's really accurate, like the kid is. What I saw in preseason can translate to NFL games. And it's not that, like he played at Iowa State for 4 seasons. He's played a lot of college football. He's almost the exact opposite of Trey Lance. We know what this kid, Brock Purdy, is. He is a career backup. He's going to be a backup. Trey Lance is going to continue to get his shots and chances, especially as they're on the same team. One Not only that he was the third overall pick, his ceiling is just higher. So those guys get those opportunities because their ceiling's higher. They get opportunities to grow. Now with Brock Purdy, he can do a lot of similar things that Jimmy Garoppolo can, short to intermediate. That starts here. But also he can move outside the pocket. He can do some things, not to the same level, but some things that Trey Lance can do as well too. So I do think that you can win a few games with them. You can go back to a more Jimmy Garoppolo, short to intermediate type offense and a potential shot play here or there. That's what I can say about Brock Purdy. I think he's a little bit better than some people want to give him credit for. And then outside of that, most people aren't talking about the kid because they don't hope he doesn't even have a chance, doesn't have to play. Right. And then when it comes to Jimmy Garoppolo and the way that this season is going to can end, yes, I hope the goal and the plan is to win a Super Bowl. My outlook this whole year on this pre-Trey injury was exactly this. I hope Trey's development was going to be good enough that we can get into a Super Bowl appearance and see what we can do in that game. If we get that far, that's icing on the cake. Obviously, you want to get into the game and win. But to me, him making the playoffs was the minimum what I wanted. He got to see what it's like from the bench last year. I wanted him to experience that this year by playing. What kind of growth he had, we'll see over the course of the season. Maybe it ends in a wild card, or maybe it ends in the divisional round, something like that, because he had a crucial pick. Guess what? That's experience. My whole outlook was the growth of Trey Lance and how far he could take this team. Going into next year, I was looking for him to then be on a real course to actually like get into and potentially win the Super Bowl. Obviously, those plans changed when he got hurt. It's Super Bowl or bust, like you said now, with Jimmy Garoppolo, because we know what he is. It's Super Bowl or bust. That's kind of my viewpoint on it. And the sad part is we'll be going into year 3 of Trey Lance, and we don't still fully know what he is. He's still going to have to develop. Luckily for them, because he's a third overall pick or first-round pick, they have 5 years of his services, right? They can do a 5th-year extension.
Absolutely.
So we'll see what happens. Year 3, year 4, and 5, can he stay healthy? I hope so. That's the plan before you have to give him a new contract. Could this potentially be a situation where you're paying this kid maybe like a Stephen Curry deal where he's exceeding the level of his actual contract before he gets paid big time? Could that potentially happen? Sure, that could actually happen because he didn't get to play his first 2 years. So maybe by year 6, year 7, he's starting to hit and he's getting MVPs, things like that. But his contract is probably lower value than the level of play he's giving you. So I know that was a little bit three.
You're good. No worries.
But that's kind of my viewpoint on it.
Jamal, if they want to check out your stuff, how can they do it?
Yeah, guys, you can find me on Twitter. Just mainly there right now. Young Jaw 49er. That's Young Jaw 49er. The number's 49. ER. That's on Twitter. I will be doing a show with Amin the Dream starting tomorrow night at 7 on his channel.
14-year-old phenom.
Yes, the kid is amazing. Like, tune into him. If you've never heard him, come check him out. If you've heard me and you follow me around, please come tune into this kid. He knows what he's talking about. A breath of fresh air. And get on the train now because he's the next generation. He's going to be leading this thing. I truly, fully believe that he'll be leading the next generation of 49ers content and fandom, to be totally honest. So I'll be on with him on Wednesday nights at 7 every other week starting this week. So this Wednesday, not next Wednesday, but the following one. And then actually had a chance to run into Grant at the game on Sunday as well, too. And we're in the works to pick up our show again. And so when that comes out, I'll let people know on Twitter, and I'm sure I'll mention it here. People who are interested and want to go that way as well, too. So look out for me.
Absolutely. You can check me out at 90849 on Twitter. Like I said, we're live every Tuesday and Thursday. We'll be live Thursday with our preview of the Denver Broncos with Kevin. I'm going to have to keep him in line because he is a fire Kyle Shanahan person, and it should be an interesting night here on the channel. But thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. 49ers throwback, I think you're absolutely nails on with that. 33-17 sounds about right. Maybe a little less, maybe 28-14, 28-10, something like that. I think that the Broncos are going to struggle to score against this defense like the Seahawks did. But we'll talk more about that Thursday night with Kevin. As always, one more thing, too. Let's win the whole fucking thing. Let's win the whole fucking thing. Hype train never stops. Right? Hype train never stops, baby.